Welcome everyone. This is an Elden Ring tank video, as you can tell from the video title. This is my take on being a tank in Elden Ring. First of all, I want to admit I'm not a pro player. I haven't spent hours reading, researching, trying to figure out what is the best build to have, because I have a job, I've got family, so I can't invest a lot of time into what is the best thing to be able to do in the game. But playing some of the Convergence mod with seamless co-op and the DLC, which I have got some video in footage on my channel from me and another guy playing through the Shadow of the Erd Tree. But this is what I believe to be the best tank build for time investment, so you can get on and enjoy the game. A couple of things I want to point out with the build is I'd like to change your perspective on Elden Ring. So rather than treating it like a Souls-like, with the seamless co-op mod and Convergence, you can kind of almost mitigate it into an RPG style game. So then your classes start to become more and more useful. So like primarily in the gameplay footage that I've got on my channel, we're running a tank and a mage. So obviously the tank's going to be up front, taking all the aggro from the bosses, keeping them far away from the mage as you can, while the mage is obviously at the back of the map chucking spells out, trying to get as much damage out as possible. People can often struggle to create an effective tank build, mainly because it is tough to balance the resource management with the damage mitigation. You want to be able to take as many hits as you can, not just turning into a pile of runes after the first or second hit, but at the same time you want to be able to adjust the build slightly. So if you can be able to stand at the front line taking all the hits, that's grand. But if you've got the more mobile bosses like the dragons and some of the Black Knight assassins, which do tend to float around the arena quite a lot, it can be frustrating to get up there. So you can alter some of the items in the build just to get you up there. It can be frustrating to try and test out different builds, see what works. There's a lot of trial and error that goes into creating a build to withstand the toughest foes. There's nothing more frustrating than getting to a tough boss fight and realising your build just isn't cutting it. So the secret that I found to creating a good tank build is you're going to want a couple of pieces of armour, which will increase your damage negation. But with the Convergence mod, there is quite a lot of benefits that you can get from these armour, especially from playing with a secondary person that's going to be focusing on getting out as much damage as they can, while you can stay up front, soaking in all the hits as much as you can and being an unstoppable wall. The skills you choose are also crucial, so you can enhance your survivability directly, while others can help you manage resources more effectively. Some of the skills that I have in there will boost your damage mitigation, and also there's one in here that will help keep the aggro on there. So let's go into a quick breakdown of the build. So first of all, one of the first items that you can get in the game with the Convergence mod is the leaden maul. Now this, at first glance, just looks like a typical other hammer that you can get into through any of the game, but the key to this is using the Ash of War that's tied to it, so the concussive smash. So the description of that is swinging the hammer upward and deliver a staggering strike. This attack deals a large amount of posture damage. So the main benefit of this is you're going to be knocking the bosses down, you're going to be stunning them for longer, which will give you time to either pull back a bit and heal, or reapply your buffs that you might need, or like just getting in a couple more hits. One of the crucial things about when you're playing with a secondary person, and I cannot stress this enough in Elden Ring, is not to go in for the critical attack. It takes up far too much time, and it can reduce your DPS that you're getting down into the bosses. If you just stand there and carry on hitting them, it will generate a lot more damage on the boss than it would you going in for a critical strike. But as you progress towards a later game, you will have to fight one of the bosses in the capital city, which is Sigurd, the Knight Cavalry main guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but then you get Sigurd's Great Mace. Now this will exponentially increase your damage as a tank, while also maintaining your ability to keep landing the criticals and breaking guards and knocking the boss down. So quick glance at it, as you can see with the passive effect that's on there, it causes blood loss build-up at 105, which is absolutely fantastic for quick burst damage once you get them hits in. The Asher Ward that's on this is Omen's Roar, so you perform a roar that causes a combustion of Omen Flames and sends out several projectiles around you, enhances a weapon with Omen Flame, increasing damage of physical attacks. While the enchantment is active, your charge heavy attacks will detonate with Omen Flames. So what this is going to do, you stand there, you do a big roar, you release like a bunch of fireballs that will target the thing that you've got locked onto, they will chase them down, deal damage, and it will set your hammer on fire. This then allows you to do a full charged heavy attack that will cause 2 initial hits. So you get one from the hammer striking and the explosion that comes from it after. This is very good for when you've staggered a boss and you can keep on landing them hits. So like I said, when they go down, try not to go in for a critical hit. Sometimes it can't be avoided, or if your DPS needs to pull back and get some FP restored, it might be a good time to go in for them. But I cannot stress enough, with this mace we've managed to do a lot of the DLC bosses in less than 2 minutes, and that's down to how we play the game and the weapons and abilities that we've got in hand. So moving on, the shield isn't as important as the weapons because you won't be mainly using it, but if you do need to require a shield, obviously pay attention towards the physical damage negation, and you want that physical to be 100%. So that way when you are blocking, you are not going to take residual damage from the block. Moving on to the armour, so the first of all we've got Lionel's Helm. This increases your strength by 1 and reduces weapon stamina cost by 4%, and it increases weapon damage by 1%. So the buffs that are on the helmet, because of the Convergent mod, isn't actually what we use a helmet for. The main reason why we've got this helmet on is because of the passive effect that you get from drinking your flask, your Wondrous Physic. So you gain an effect that will force all enemies to attack you. Also, whenever you take damage, you and your allies gain a buff that will increase all damage you deal by 1%. The buff stacks with itself. It lasts for 2 minutes, and the secondary stackable buffs last for 30 seconds each. When the duration of the primary effect expires, all stacks will also end. You gain a Death Ward effect, which will prevent your death 1 time. This helmet is a massive game changer. Like I say, if you are playing in co-op, I can't recommend, if you're going for a tank build, have this helmet on. It will keep the bosses focused on you, away from your allies, and it will make sure that they can do as much damage as they can while you're stood there soaking it up. The stacking effect is quite nice, where you get a 1% increase to damage and it will stack upon itself. I don't know how long it stacks up for, but I imagine it's probably goes to about 10-15%. The Death Ward as well, which is really good. If you're pulling back and you need to heal and they manage to get that last cheeky hit off that takes you below, it will prevent your death, which is absolutely fantastic. It allows you to get the heal back off and then carry on progressing with the fight itself. If you are playing solo and you haven't got a co-op partner, I would recommend using the Bull Goat helmet. So you get strength, endurance and vigour by 2. And then you also gain the effect where you get HP recovery of 15 per second for a minute, and you become immune to stagger. So that allows you to carry on getting your hits off, to get the bosses down, and to get them critical hits in when you're playing solo, or keep on piling on the damage. The next piece of armour that I'd recommend using is the Lionel's armour. This increases your strength by 2, reduces weapon stamina by 8%, and it will also increase your weapon damage by 2. And then you gain the buff of Command the Legion. So when you use a Crimson Flask, you and your allies gain a buff that causes a 5% increase to the damage you deal, and you and each ally gain an aura that causes consistent Deathblight build-up on nearby enemies, which lasts for a minute. So the way that Deathblight works in the Convergence mod, everything can be affected by Deathblight. You can see it in some of the videos when you see the spikes come out from them. The Deathblight will reduce the damage, I believe, that the bosses deal, or it might increase the damage that you can deal to bosses, which within the mod you having this applied to any boss that you fight will make the fights go a lot easier. The next piece of armour is the Bull Goat's Gauntlets, which, same again, strength, endurance and vigour. These are like the three main stats that you'll be focusing on throughout your levelling. But this has an effect where when you use a grease or a consumable, you get an effect that absorbs, that causes you to absorb all damage you take by 2%. This can stack up to itself for a 20% absorption. It lasts for 2 minutes, and then when the effect of the grease ends, all the stacks will go as well. So the main takeaway from this is when you've got a boss that can cause a lot of multi-hits, this will stack upon itself up to 20%, and you'll get 20% damage absorption on top of whatever else you're running. It lasts for 2 minutes, but the main reason that you have to pay attention to this is like greases can be applied, which will trigger this, or any food or anything like that you can eat will also trigger this. But when that effect ends of the grease, this will also come off. So you need to pay attention to when it goes off so you can pull back quickly, or if they've gone down after you've staggered the boss, to reapply that grease so you can get the stacks back on there and increase your damage absorption. Next piece of armour that I run is the Bull Goat Greaves. This is strength, endurance and vigour again by 2. And then when you drink your blue flask, so your cerulean flask, you gain an effect that increases all poise damage you deal by 20%. And you also gain the effect of your character will constantly sprint without having to drain your stamina. So this is good for obvious reasons. Your poise damage, more that you can deal, the quicker you can get the boss down into a staggered state, so you can keep stacking that damage on. It's just a nice little benefit for your poise damage. You have got like alternatives such as the Lionel Greaves, where you and your allies gain a buff for 15% HP recovery per second and reduce all damage coming in by 10%. So you can adjust and change, but I find the Bull Goat with the increased poise damage will help you DPS that boss down a lot quicker than having extra damage protection. On to talismans. So the main ones that I like to use is a two-handed sword talisman. Just a straight buff by 10% for when you're doing an attack with two-handed weapons. So I mainly use a Sigurd's Mace for two-handed, which allows you to get that increase in there. Next ones that I like to run is the increase to physical damage by 10%, and then the increase by 7.5, just to stack on the amount of damage that you can deal. It just helps get you to defeating the bosses quicker, and it also helps when you're going to the areas where the boss is, helps you clear down them lower level mobs. And then lastly is Vergiska's Discus, which will raise your defense with a higher equipment load. So this means that, so now I'm at 69.6% equipment load. I have physical negation of 52.621%. So if we, even though we're not going to use them, just go down and try to stack on as many items that we can, what we're carrying. So we'll just put a load of shields on because they're quite heavy. Put that one on, and we'll put that one on. So we're at 110.6, and our physical defense has gone up to 55.11. So it's not a massive increase, but what we go for with this build is the higher that we can have as base, the better off when we start applying as buffs and stuff like that, because it's all percentages. You will get increased physical damage negation. Higher that we can get this, the longer we're going to last in the fights and the more hits that we can take. The other bits that I like to use is we've got the Iron Jar Aromatic. So you use FP to turn the wielder's body into steel. So this will boost your poise resistance, damage negation at the expense of mobility and lightning resistance. So with this, so as you can see, we've got heavy load on currently, which means we get to do our favourite thing that everybody loves, is the fat rolls. But with this build, mobility is not going to be an issue. You pop this jar, Iron Jar Aromatic, as you can see it applies. We've gone up to 73.069 physical resistance. So we are reducing almost 3/4 of what is coming in that's hitting us, which allows you to take so much more hits. It doesn't matter if you want to roll out the way, forget your B button, that doesn't exist anymore. When you pop these, you just stand there, take all the hits, and just deal damage as much as you can. The next item that I like to run while I'm out and about is the greases. So there's one or two ways that you can play this. I just tend to use the fire grease. They're easy to craft, they're easy to make, you can get loads of them. But if you know the damage resistance of the bosses, you can tailor your grease to be able to deal increased damage. So say like the Tibia Mariners are weak to holy, so you can coat your armor in holy damage. That means you can increase your DPS as much as you can. But for simplicity reasons, I just run the fire grease. I don't see any like differences just for the ease of use to put these on and then you can forget about it. So we'll chuck the fire grease on as well. But you're not limited to just using greases. Like I say, you've got loads of items that are in the game. Like you've got the pickled turtle nets that can boost your stamina recovery. You've got the exalted flesh that boosts physical resistance. If you can get the items to craft these, then you're on for a winner, because you can be starting to apply your gauntlets effect to the fight while you're in there. The next thing that I'd like to go over is your wondrous physics. So we'll just quickly teleport back to the table of Lost Grace, just so I can go over like what I like to run in the physic and maybe a couple of options that you guys like to use. Let's go into this. So the first of all is you want the Opaline Hard tier. This will add a further 15% into the physic damage resistance. So like I said, with the talisman that you've got on, trying to get that increased baseline loadout as high as you can will give you a good percentage base to start increasing upon everything else. Couple of options that you can use in the tier as well. So obviously I like to play co-op, so I want to be able to start dishing out damage while we're fighting the boss, so I just get the physical attacks by 10% mixed in the physic just to help out with dealing boss. Early one that you can get is the Strength Not Crystal tier, just to increase strength by 10, which will also add to the damage. But towards the later stages of the game, you want to start going towards the increases in percentages, because you will be dealing more damage and you won't have to require the increase in strength. But just for an early stage game, if you've got like a weapon that you want to use and you haven't quite got enough strength to be able to use it, this is like, it'll give you a couple of minutes where you can use that weapon in a boss fight. When you're playing solo, I like to use a Crimson Burst Crystal tier just to give you a bit of health regen. It means you don't have to pay attention too much to the fight while it's going off. You can just wait for this to replenish your health, but you will be using your red flask as much as you can just to keep that Death Blight stacked up. Another quick thing I'd like to touch on, depending on what boss you're fighting, like we did the Madness boss recently in the Shadow of the Erd Tree. Obviously the status debuffs can be very irritating to deal with, so in Convergence, if you rest at any grace, Table of Lost, whatever you want to be resting at, you've got Remnant Crafting. Now the Warding Remnants are very good because you can get items like this, which will grant you immunity to death, to sleep, to madness, frostbite, bleed, immunity to rot, immunity to poison, which will just mean that, like, say if you're fighting a bleed boss, so like Moog for example, he was one of the difficult bosses to fight because the bleed will take a massive chunk of your HP regardless of what your physical defense is. But put immunity to bleed on, haven't got to worry about that. You can keep at the front line to be able to take the hits and obviously allow your friend to start getting the DPS out. So that's my build that I tend to use. I have got probably about 6 videos out currently of this build being into effect. It's not the prettiest looking thing, but obviously with Convergence mod you have got the transmog in there to change it as and how you like to use. Just a couple of pointers that I'll go over. So obviously you're not going to get the Sigurd's Great Mace until a lot later on, but using the Leaden Wall, I've got 2 here. So what we'll do So we'll do the concussive smash, and then just with that one skill, you go up to 75%. So this is one of the best weapons I can recommend for a tank to use in the early game in Convergence. So just by using your Ash of War, you do get increased physical resistances. What we'll do, we'll put that one on. Put that on. So just from 2 items and using the Ash of War, we're up to 87. 87 physical resistance. Even without using the Ash of War, we're up to 77. So we're doing well over like 3/4 damage resistance, and that's without the additional buffs that you can get from the gauntlets. So you've got your damage absorption, so you can get another 20% on top of that. And then you've also got yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so you can get another 20% on top of that. So that'll be pushing you up into the 90s during the boss fight. So you'll be able to take all the hits. Like I said, the leather mold, fantastic. I used it all the way up to Sigurd's, the Knight Captain Sigurd. Once I got his mace, I decided to move over to the Great Mace, just because when you're doing solo runs, it's a little bit easier to get that damage off. The bleed is a massive benefit towards it as well, because you get 105 bleed loss. The only issue I found with Convergence is that there's not a lot of stuff tailored towards strength builds. You're kind of limited to what you can use with the armors and stuff like that, and the weapons. It all tends to be going towards intelligence and faith. I've tried going down the faith route in Convergence, where you can apply the buffs like the Golden Vow and stuff like that. You have got items obviously in the DLC that allows you to put in the increased damage and defense. I think it's by 10% with the Golden Vow. I've tried applying all the buffs. I had my faith up to, I think, about 43, where putting buffs on. But for whatever reason, as soon as you take your seal off and start doing your additional buffs, it takes off the ones that you put in with faith. So hopefully someone will be able to explain me why it's not working. I just think it's because of the mechanics of how the mod's set up. But for a simple, easy tank build that's not going to let you down, and you're going to have fun with, you're not going to have your endless deaths, as long as you're paying attention to your health, popping them flasks as much as you can while you're in the fight. Having someone there to help you is always handy, but it's not always like necessary. I've played majority of the game solo up until we got to the DLC, and then we started branching into more the co-op. I think this personally is the easiest build to get into. I will be putting links in the description below that will take you over to the wiki page for Convergence that will show you where to get the armor pieces. Quite a lot of them are locked behind the bosses, but your starting armor that you get with the Dreadnought and the Leaden Maul will help you get through those initial boss fights. Like the Iron Jar Aromatic, you can get from 2 merchants in Limgrave. Very early, you can start crafting them. They are quite expensive to start crafting in the early stages, but if you invest in it, only use them for the boss fights, then you'll be on for a winner. You can get through the game as quick as you can, get to the higher levels where runes start becoming less apparent. As you can see, I've got 1,692. That's just from buying some items, crafting, and various other bits that I've been going through. If you've got any suggestions that I can do to make the build better, I'm always open to people talking, sharing their ideas. We are a community after all. We want to get the best and help each other along. If you want to see this in action, like I have got, like I've said, about 6 videos that are currently up on the channel that will show you the build in action with someone else in the co-op aspect. That's pretty much it. If you've got any suggestions, if there's any issues or any questions, pop them in the comments below. I'll be quite happy to discuss, talk to you. You can even hop on a Discord call with me. I'll go through stuff that I've gone. If you're struggling to get the armor pieces or anything like that, and you absolutely want to follow this build, if you drop me a message, we can drop onto a co-op game sesh. I can help you get the items. I can show you where I found them. But that's it. This is my ultimate tank build guide to Elden Ring. that's got me through the base game, the DLC, and all the Convergence content. So I hope you've all enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. And enjoy the rest of your day, and good luck with your tanking adventure.